guys talking about Runaway Bride.
Catherine Tate guest stars.
Yeah, Edward is in the middle of a fantastic journey that's a discussion on the go, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
except for me, sitting in my room.
Before we even say anything about this episode, anyone who, knows the answer to this, I feel like I know what this is, but I need to be 100% sure. What was the deal, going into this episode? Did they know they were gonna get Donna back at some point, or was it just Catherine Tate is well known? Let's give Catherine Tate an episode.
It was Catherine Tate is well known, so let's get Catherine Tate. Russell T Davies explains in the Writer's Tale book that he originally envisioned the series' board companion as a newspaper reporter named Penny Carter. And then Catherine Tate was like, I want to come back to Doctor Who. And then he's like, okay, I'll just change some things up and bring Donna back.
That's really interesting. I have an essay's worth of things to say about this episode, but I don't want to step on anyone else's toes in the process, so you guys should probably go first.
This episode was funny.
Yeah. Basic thoughts is this was a lot of fun, but just the character stuff is a lot of fun. That's why I like it.
I need to go off because I think this episode is brilliant. I think it's up there with A Christmas Carol as really easily one of the better Christmas specials. But I think there are some good ones. I think Twice Upon a Time is pretty good. I think Husbands of River Song is. But this and A Christmas Carol I think are genuinely great episodes outside of those standards even.
The strange noise that the Ragnos actor keeps making trying to act around the prosthetic teeth.
Because that does sound like a thing that Spider Monster alien to do.
Yep.
I did not this episode expecting it to be one of those episodes that reaffirms for me why I love this show and why I love talking about it with you guys, but it totally was. The reason I thought maybe we planned from the beginning to have Donna come back at some point is because if she was just a regular one-off guest appearance character, she is bizarrely complex and well written.
Yeah, she really is. I think they thought they were going to bring her back for maybe for specials or something like that once in a while, but I don't think they thought that she was going to become a actual companion. Like Edward said, it wasn't planned.
Russell T Davies also had an incentive to make this episode good because I believe there was a little bit of outcry from some fans that Catherine Tate was going to be on Doctor Who and that they hated the idea.
I guess they're just people who really, really don't like Catherine Tate because there are people who even after season 4 will be at least in this episode, Donna's really annoying and grating. One or two scenes, she plays it up a bit too much, and it can be a bit cloying. Her and David Tennant just have amazing chemistry. And one of the big things that stands out to me about this episode is that, they're together for maybe 15 minutes. And 15 minutes into the episode, these two characters have known each other for years. And they have, a real relationship.
Best friends, basically.
A relationship where Donna is the friend that slaps you in the face when you get overly excited about anything.
Yeah, specifically, she's the one who slaps him in the face when he gets too scary, or, when he gets too detective an element of stuff.
Where he starts babbling technobabble at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Part of what I love about this episode is that it is a hilarious, just fast-paced, goofy romp. But at the same time, if about it, it can be taken as the best thing that we come to for this show, which is sort of a really optimistic commentary about human nature and our place in the universe. I remember really not liking this episode, memorable, and just the goofy joke stuff. I don't know, what we do with Donna as a character and sort of the commentary about just the nature of the universe. I don't know, this is a really great episode, I think. It's
aged well. It's not aged like a fine wine, but it's up there.
Yeah, the parts of it that haven't aged well is just the stuff that usually doesn't age well in Russell episodes.
2000s TV CGI.
And the fact H.C. Clemens on a flip phone.
Oh, God.
Yeah. What makes this episode for me, like I said before, it's the character stuff, mainly between Donna and Ten.
Yes.
It's instant best friends. They have a chemistry together. Every scene they just nail it. This is their adventure and getting to know each other. It really does set up like a first companion episode, so it's really surprising when she doesn't get in the TARDIS at the end.
And at the same time, it makes total sense for what we do with her in this episode. Like, my memory of this episode prior to rewatching it now is just, I only remember the first 15 minutes, and so everything after, like, minute 15 of this episode was kind of new for me. Like, I remembered the Rachnos being in it, and I remembered that Lance did stuff, but, like, all the details were completely blurry. Also, really like the music for this episode.
The horn Donna theme gets introduced here.
Yeah, and again, like, if this was a one-off character, we give her a really memorable, like, theme for a one-off character. Like, do we do this with anyone else?
Does A Christmas Carol count?
Kind of.
I think we're talking about, like, in terms of the musical themes, because she does have, like, a theme
Well,
in that episode.
The Clara theme did get introduced in The Snowman.
Yeah, but she was, like, already guaranteed to be companion at that point.
Pretty much a pretty unique moment in Doctor Who history.
Yeah, it feels like we put a bizarre amount of, like, work into making this character stand out. And, like, so I remember a lot of the Doctor and Donna bickering and stuff is that even this early, we're establishing Donna as, like, the really human, empathetic, like, individual perspective one. And the thing I love the most about this whole episode is just her and the Doctor and small picture versus big picture, where the Doctor keeps getting on her case about you gotta see the big picture, even when she's like, there are children here, there are people who have been hurt by these things, somebody needs to help them, and he's like, focus on the big picture. And I love it when we get to Lance, because Lance is kind of the Doctor's big picture perspective if you take it to the worst possible extreme, where the Doctor is all about, like, the wonders of the universe, and that's what Lance wants, but he wants it at the expense of anyone else, and he just does not care about people. And the moment after Lance, like, betrays them, and the Doctor's saying, we're gonna go back further in the universe, or further in time than I've ever gone, isn't it exciting? And Donna's just sitting trying not to bawl her eyes out.
Lance, it seems where, like, he's willing to backstab people in order to go see the universe, whereas the Doctor was like, no, you can just go out and see it and not own a thing or screw anyone over.
And Donna is the one, no, being on Earth and, like, appreciating, like, little stupid things and like caring for individuals can work just as well. The Doctor has that line. It seems like Donna's been disillusioned, and she's they're staring out at the before the Earth is formed, and she's like, Lance was right. We're all just tiny and meaningless. And the Doctor's like, but that's what makes humans special, is that you give importance to things like Christmas and holidays and weddings and just making sense out of chaos by giving value to things that could be seen as insignificant. And so that's basically the episode saying Donna is what's great about humankind. And that's the difference between the Doctor and Lance, is that the Doctor can see the value in that.
Lance just wants to throw it all away. He just looks at it, it's all just trash. Donna, she's just, a gossiper or a waste of life. I want to see the stars. That's where it's really at.
And chances are, I would have the Ben Solo view. Just burn everything to the ground and start over.
I like that Donna pathetic that she still, at the end of the day, says, even after all he did, Lance didn't deserve to die. Like, that's how much she values life and is just a good person.
Yeah, most of us would probably let Lance die. Yeah, Donna, she's a good soul.
Now, this was an episode of Torchwood. Jack and Gwen would just look at each other and be like, nah, leave him.
Yeah, that's the Torchwood way.
Yeah, we'll get to Torchwood when we get to it, but, like, speaking of Torchwood and the music, I love that once they find the underground lab, there are Torchwood theme notes mixed in with all the, like, horns and the jazzy stuff.
Yep.
It's just the thing that I like most about Donna, and, like, what makes me think we had a plan for her in the future, is just how much all of this tracks comes in Series 4. Like, if you look at Fires of Pompeii and Planet of the Ood and, like, the Library two-parter, we just keep expanding on what we set up in this episode, which is that Donna is just the really sort of small picture-minded ball of pure empathy. Even going forward into the future, we're paying attention to what we're doing with this character, and that's great.
Like I said, I think they might have thought she might be a guest star or something in the future, but this really does feel like a setup for, like, what happens in Season 4. It's almost weird when we get a different companion instead.
Yeah. I would argue that it's because how they built off of her in Series 4 was done so well that they were able to maintain an illusion that her coming back was planned when it really wasn't.
Yeah, I think that's probably what happened there. But they did a good job because it does, like I said, just kind of flowed perfectly.
Exactly 15 minutes in, where Donna, after she gets saved, something bad happens. I don't remember. The doctor's like, sorry. And she's like, oh, it's not your fault. And the doctor says, oh, that's a change. And I'm like, that's a line that if these two didn't have the chemistry they did, would feel like it's too soon in your relationship for you to be talking to each other like that. But I totally buy it. Yeah, and like later on, he's rambling on again. He's like, you have never been this quiet.
It's like you only known each other for like a day, and you like already know each other's characters' personalities and stuff.
How do you guys feel about, beyond just like the lisp and like the speech pattern thing, how the Rachnos is handled and the plot device or whatever?
I'm not a big fan of them. I get what they're going with them and stuff. They're okay. They're like, to set the plot up, I guess. But as far as that goes, you had to feed Donna, like, it takes months
Yeah.
apparently, and then they just use the boyfriend instead. And it's like, why did you need to do this for months on end? Like I said, that's when it gets bad area. But honestly, I don't care about that part. That's the one part I think is kind of weak in the episode. When we get to that stuff, I'm like, I like the ending though. It gets real dark. That was good.
I can't tell if the fact that the Rachnos is like a complete Saturday morning cartoon villain detracts from the story or enhances it. She is just the worst, and she's completely over the top and insane, gleeful about killing people and destroying lives. And by the end of the episode, even she is sort of worthy of Donna's sympathy. Of like, she keeps screaming, my children, my children. She's just got this over the top affect. But Donna's like, okay, maybe it's time to stop. This isn't all right. We kind of murdered all of her babies.
It's a bit of a tone difference. Like, okay, like I said, the villain's very cartoony and over the top, or that Saturday morning cartoon kind of villain and stuff. And then we have like a really dark moment.
And not just the design, the practical effect holds up really well. Like, I can't tell what's like costume and what's potentially CG.
The Rachnos, they did the best with the time window they had. The whole problem when you just only have one episode and you're trying to do all of these things with the villain, it kind of gets worked away into a messy pile.
I suppose. I don't know if it's a pile so much as it is she's just a thin character. We're trying to do a lot with her, but she's not in it for the first half of the episode. It's all the Santa robots.
I think the ending works, but like I said, the stuff right before it with her doesn't. It's just kind of there to push the plot.
Yeah, that part of the episode is when we just kind of say the villain plot can just sort of be in the background while we do character stuff. Kind of like the costume, we did spend a lot of time on that because they just brought the Santa robots back. So I guess that was just a really cheap way to save money.
Yeah.
Just let's do the Santa robots again.
Yeah.
Yes, this time it's different because there's Christmas tree decorations as grenades. Death by Christmas tree that chops everything in its path or exploding plastic shards.
I would take my chances with the one that chops everything in its path, honestly. I need a bunch of glass on the floor. I step around, I get a big... That's not okay.
I think you can outrun the tree, let's be honest.
Also, am I wrong, or is, like, what they use to control the tree, is it just a literal golden painted PS2 controller?
I think it is. I was saying that.
It looks more like a Nintendo 64 controller.
Yeah, I think it's just an old controller. I don't know which game system it's from.
Yeah, wait a minute. You're right. I think it might be N64, right? Because the PS2 doesn't have, like, the big thing in the middle.
They just had that laying around, and they said, you know what, this is going to be a great prop.
How many people noticed that? Or alternatively, they were really, really young and like maybe even saw this before they ever saw N64 controller? It's the thing Santa robots used in Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I bet you money that's happened with at least one person.
At least we got a really funny joke about the doctor's pockets being bigger on the inside.
Yeah.
No, that's kid-friendly
Finding
innuendo or not.
annoying.
Kid-friendly innuendo, bigger on the inside, the pocket. It's just one of those things in Doctor Who you go with because it's funny and quirky and a bit whimsical.
And because it's David Tennant sells it without effort.
Yeah.
He really does. Pulls a big old controller out of his jacket and he's like, "Where did you put that?" The pockets are bigger on the inside. And I'm like, okay.
I mean, the Knife Doctor could have just hidden a giant ray gun in there and blow up all the Daleks in the Series 1 finale.
I was going to say, let's talk sort of about the Doctor's character as an individual in this episode, but I do have one other thing that I want to say about Lance, which is that I appreciate that, like, the fact that he doesn't value Donna properly is actually what gets him killed. Like, the Rachnos has the two of them tied up, and Lance is like, kill her, but the Rachnos is like, you were really rude to your lady friend, so I'm gonna kill you first.
He had no respect for her and stuff, and guess what? That's what's gonna get you killed.
Even villains that are mothers have standards.
And, like, maybe that's even more of, like, a wider commentary thing of, like, that kind of selfish mindset doesn't belong exploring the outer universe.
And Donna made the workplace living hell for him, constantly trying to get him to say yes.
I know that we were all looking forward to the last time we did this being the last time in a while that we would have to talk about Rose.
And now the Doctor starts his phase where he just can't get over her.
This is when he goes into, like, oh god, a dour mode where he just dwells on her. And
really looking forward to Rose being gone, except she's not, really.
Because, like, unlike the Donna part of this episode, it's made worse by other episodes that come later on. Because the way that this episode plays it, it's like, he should kind of be over it by the end of this episode, right? Or
yeah, but no, we're just gonna treat Martha unfairly.
If I'm writing the show, then the way I do it is, he asks Donna to come along with him, and even though Donna rejects him, like, the idea that he would be open to traveling with someone else is him like, okay, Rose was a phase of my life, I have to let it go, let me move on to someone else. Hey, I have chemistry with this person, let's just go on adventures. Okay, Donna's only around for this episode as far as we know, so he can still be kind of down about it, like, come Smith and Jones. But after Smith and Jones, like, we should be in a place of, like, okay, we're done with Rose. But I guess Russell is just too enamored with her as, like, a creation of his that...
It almost makes you wonder, what did Billy Piper do to Russell?
he really loved her for some reason, or the creation of Rose. But and then when we get to the next episode, he's like, Martha, I'll take you for on trips. Strings her along until like halfway through the season.
Feels like a real weird way to handle that. It's worse because it's not like it's intrusive in this episode. Like, it's sort of the Doctor's little arc in this episode outside of how he affects Donna. Because what I really like about him, he is the audience's point of view character for the most part, but he's kind of like the supporting protagonist to Donna's character arc in Crucible. But the stuff where we do give him, like, his conflict with, like, getting over Rose and stuff, it doesn't intrude upon the Donna plot and what he and Donna are up to.
Like some episodes in Series 3 where Rose Fang does intrude a lot.
Yeah, the Doctor, like, doesn't have an attitude about it.
Okay, it was raw. It just happened. 20 minutes. Donna goes up there seconds after he loses her and stuff. So I understand that, like, when he's at the wedding and stuff, it starts bugging him. But, he starts working past it and all that. But then it's like the rest of the season stays there. And that's kind of frustrating because it seemed like this whole episode was him kind of learning to move on away from Rose.
Yeah. We only have a couple of minutes of, like, screen time with her and not much dialogue. But I kind of feel like maybe Donna's mom is a different character in this episode than we make her into later.
That's because we don't know much about her to begin with. I mean, in this episode, she's practically a background character.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, like, one or two things we do get with her make it seem like she's a bit more open and affectionate, as when we get to her later, just she's, like, does nothing but nag.
Maybe it's because of what happens in between this episode and Partners in Crime that kind of starts that.
That is entirely possible. We'll see how that pans out once we get to Turn Left, because I know that Turn Left has her, like, pre this episode.
Yeah. To the point where even the show points out how cruel of a parent she is to Donna.
Yeah. we really go all the way with that. This episode, I would not assume that she is a terrible woman like I will later.
At this point, she's just a background character.
Not a complaint. I just think it's interesting. I don't know if any of us will be able to like properly answer this, but what do you think it is that might have contributed to this episode not being so well remembered? Because I remember like years and years ago, back when IMDb message boards were still a thing, and I used to go on those pretty much for Doctor Who stuff only. This was an episode that a lot of people like complained about.
I think part of it has to do with the fact that, well, because early Donna Noble's repulsive to a lot of people. Like, she hasn't really grown into the great person that we'll come to remember her as in the later half of Series 4.
Having a woman be bossy, loud, going to just remember that and think, oh, it's just a loud, noisy woman that was on the screen. And I think that's why a lot of people didn't like it.
Like I said, I can only remember the goofy shenanigans portions of this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that tells you what sticks with you about it.
I hear people like complain about it a lot, and I'm like, I never really got the complaint.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm gonna go back to this episode for like this is on my list of episodes that I don't actually have watched just to remind myself why I love this show.
Just so that you could forget how bad it just was that you might have watched.
I don't know. Like, very rarely does the show get like so bad that I feel like just what on earth did I witness? When I'm away from it for too long, you know? Like I have that with a lot of shows, like circumstances keep me from watching it for a while and I forget why I like it.
Here's an episode we all agree we like. It was good.
An excuse to gush about this episode. Later then, and to anyone who hasn't like watched this episode in a while, go watch this episode, listen to me. It's really good. You need to give it more credit. Bye, I guess.
Listen to Nick. See you guys. Bye.